All right, everyone. So we have non-primitive data types, which are arrays, and we have they can be an array of numbers, or they can be an array of strings. What else? What's another aspect of an array? Why would we call an array a non-primitive data type? Spencer already said it in the chat. Because an array can have a mixture of numbers and strings. So it's not as simple as a number being only a number and a string being only something in quotations. We can have a mixture of both in an array, and that would be a non-primitive data type. Okay. So we have these forms of data, and we want to define them in a variable. So what's the way that we would write a variable? Okay. We'll declare the variable by the keyword var, and then we'll say whatever we want to name. Let's say var instructor. Equals, and then I'll give it a value, a type of data value. So I'll put myself here. If I want to write another variable, this is another variable. So why is it well, before I ask that, let me ask this. How could I change instructor from equaling Josh to equaling CISO? Okay, by the equal sign, right? This equal sign assigns a value. All right. Okay, so one equal sign assigns a value. So if I would like to reassign instructor from Josh to CISO, all I would need to do is on the next line say var instructor equals CISO. Okay. Is there any other way I could do this? Right. Now we can also do this. We can say var. Oh, won't let me write. You can assume that we still have those variables declared. You can say var. Oh, it won't write at all. Okay. I'm going to have to ditch this Blackboard and fix it later. So let's go ahead and do that now. Or I'll have to change screen here. Here we go. So here's where we were. I'll pull up the code editor. So if I had declared var instructor equals Josh, and I wanted to also say var TA equals CISO, I can reassign it a value by saying var instructor equals TA. Now the value of TA will be assigned to instructor. Okay, so let's get a status check. I just want to make sure that we're all familiar with these types of concepts. Okay, 10 out of 10. Great. Just to remind everyone, 10 is like a complete understanding. 0 is like no understanding at all. So something in the middle would be anything less than complete. Yeah, right, Perna. So look at line 10 here. We said var instructor equals TA. Now, what's the difference between one equal sign and 2?
One is setting a value. 2 is asking if it's true or false.
Exactly. So, Perna, to answer your question, if we say something like var instructor equals TA, what we are doing is checking here. We are asking with the double equal sign. We're asking, is it equal to TA? So we're asking a question. We're checking if the value is that. Okay, one equal sign will assign a value. It'll say, this will equal this. It's more of a statement. Okay, great. Let's see if I can get my Blackboard working. I never had it break down like that. Oh, here we go. Great. Okay, now let's go over a couple more concepts here. What are loops? Specifically for loops.
A repeating cycle meant to cycle through or check against values.
Right. It's a cycle of checking against values. So what do we mean by this? Let's draw a for loop now. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that for you guys. I'm going to say for, that declares the for loop. And then in the for loop, we have var I, and I stands for what? Anyone want to say? For? Yes. Var I equals 0. And then we have a semicolon. And then we can say something like, while I is less than 11, I plus plus. And while this is true, console.log I. Okay, so what does this mean? And how do we read this? First, we have the for loop declared by the keyword for. Okay, you always need a for loop when you always need the keyword for when writing a for loop. Okay, let me try to change the color here. the keyword for to declare a for loop. And then we have here these parentheses. All right, and what goes in these parentheses? Why do we have these parentheses here? Let me answer this one. This is just the way to write any type of function in JavaScript. Yes, exactly. It's the parameters. Anything that goes in here are the parameters. Okay, anything that goes inside the curly brackets here, this is where the do something of the function, this is where the function does what you tell it to do. Okay, so anything in the green curly brackets, that's where you would do that thing that you're asking it to do. So in this case, we're just console logging I. All right, so the first thing we do when we are reading a for loop is look at the variable here. So this is step 1. First, we have var I equals 0. So when we read some JavaScript, we're trying to understand the function of whatever JavaScript we're trying to read. It is a good practice to T diagram. So if you're not familiar with the T diagram, I'm going to write one here. On the left, we have the list of variables. On the right, we have a list of values. So I'm just going to write var and val. Var for variables, val for values. Okay, so we look at step number 1 and we say var I equals 0. So in here, we write I and the value 0. Then step 2 is to look at this statement here. Well, I is less than 11. That less than sign is checking if I, the current status of I, which we just said was 0 here, if it is less than 11. Okay, in this case it is. So if it meets this qualification, then we move on to step 3. Step 3 is right here in this do something section. So we do the thing that the function asks us to do, which is to console log I. So I'm going to create a console section here. This is our screen, our console. And in this area, I'm going to do whatever the console here requires. So I'm going to console log I. I right now is 0. So the machine will print a 0 to the console. Now, step 4 is to increase I. So I is 0 right now, so then it will increase to 1. By the way, what does plus plus mean? Anybody? Increase by 1. Right. I equals itself plus 1. Increase it by 1. Okay. So now that we've increased it by 1, we go back to step 2. We go from 4 to 2. And we look at the value of I. I is 1. 1 is less than 11. This is true. So then we go on to step 3 and we console log I. I then is going to be 1. And we do this until this is no longer true. So we increase the value of I, go to step 4. We console.log I here when it equals 2. And then we do that all the way until we reach what? Until I equals 11. When I equals 11, we no longer console log it because it's not going to meet this requirement. 11 is not going to be less than 11. 11 is only going to be equal to 11 once it reaches 11. So all that we would have consoled would have been from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. I'm pretty sure since we've gone over this in programming basics, and most of you have gone through this lesson before, we all know how for loops should work, but I need to know your level of understanding. So please give me a status check on how a for loop works. Okay, great. So then we're doing great on time. Let's go ahead and move along here to our platform. If you go to the algorithm section and go to week 1, day 2, you'll be able to see these problems here. What we're going to do is break out into groups. And when we break out into groups, we're going to solve these just as I did the original for loop. Okay, we're going to write a T diagram all the variables, diagram the variable changes, the console log as well, and predict the output. Okay, we're going to do that for lesson 1, lesson 2, and then we're going to go take a look at lesson 3. Now, I hadn't explained this completely yet. Let's take a look at this before we break out. Okay, here we have a function. Let's see if I can increase the size here. Our function is indicated by this keyword function. And then we have the name of the function. And then we have the parameters. Now this here is a placeholder. What we want to do is see where the function is defined. The beginning is here. That's the opening bracket. The closing is here. So just because a function is defined doesn't mean it's going to start running itself. Just like if you read a recipe in a cookbook, you're not going to assume that the recipe is going to cook itself. You have to actually start it. You have to start the process. The way to start the process of the function is the invocation. The invocation is here, get total, calls the name of the function. And then within these parentheses, you always need a parentheses in the invocation. You have the value of an array, 1, 3, and 5. So array of numbers is a placeholder value for this array, 1, 3, and 5. And then we go through this here. We T-diagram our variables. This is the numbers of array of numbers here is the value of the array. This here, when you have the brackets, it's indicating the indice of the array. Okay, so let's go over the concept of an array really quickly here. Here we are. Okay, so here we have an array, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, I'm going to say var r equals this array. So when we count the indices of an array, we count from 0. So this 0 is at index 0. This 1 is at index 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. If our array looked like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, this is still index 0. Oops. This is still index 1. This is still index 2. And this is still index 3. Okay, now, when we if I were to say r dot length, and I'm looking just at this first one here, not the second one I wrote. What is the length of our original array here? 5. Okay, so that means that we are counting from here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has 5 indices, so we're counting from 1 when we're counting the length. But when we're counting indices, we're starting from 0. First indice is 0. Second indice is 1. Yeah. Third indice is 2. So if I wanted to say array length dot length, then we would know the value is 5. Okay, value is 5. What if I wanted to call the original array at indice 3? What value? How would I have to write that? Okay, very well. Thank you, Tina. So we'd have to say r at 3. That's how we get the array at that indice. So we are looking at 0, 1, 2, 3. Now the value of array at indice 3 is 3. If I were to say what's the value of indice 3 on this array, assuming that's our variable array, the value is going to be 4, right? We would still write it like this, r at 3, but now the value is going to be 4. Okay, let's get a status check how well we're understanding how to count the indices of an array and the length of an array. Okay, awesome. All right, so then here, when we are asking for array of numbers at 0, what we're asking for is the placeholder's value, which is going to be this array of 0, 3, 5. And at indice 0, then we are pointing at this one, 1. Okay, I think that explains enough. Oh, one more thing I want to ask here. What does plus equal mean?
You're adding to the original. Yeah, adding plus.
Yeah, so if I say var x equals 5, and then I say x plus equals 2, then I am adding 2 to the value of x. So now x would equal 7. It's exactly as Spencer's saying. It's shorthand for var name equals name plus whatever it is that I'm adding to it. All right. So now let's go ahead and break off into groups. T-diagram each of these blocks of code. I can paste them into the Discord chat if you guys don't know how to access this. It's just on the platform. If you go all the way to the right here, now it won't left click again. You have to go all the way to algorithms, and then you'll be able to see week 1, day 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and break off into groups. I'm going to make these groups here. Let's see how many people we have. All right, we're back. Let's go ahead and share.
Okay. I also did mine on paper, but I can try to.
Oh, paper.
Let me turn off my camera.
Okay, but we need someone to share the screen, like if they've worked on like an Excel sheet, T-diagramming. Did any group do that? Oh, here we go. Okay, that's a notepad.
I mean, yeah, but I just have the answers up there. Let me just turn off my. Does the video not show up?
No, I mean this shows up. Yeah.
Okay, one sec. Okay, that should be better. All right, so for number 1, A equals 25, and then automatically it's you take away 13 and A becomes 12. And then you console log A divided by 2, which is 6. And so that's what we did. And then I wrote console over here. I put 6. This is not, I don't even know anything.
That's too hard to see in that small camera anyways.
Okay.
Of your not your camera, but the view of it. Your video is small compared to the screen. So
okay, maybe I can try to write stuff out. Yeah, 25 becomes 12 because 13 is subtracted. You divide that by 2 and you have 6. And then A becomes hello. Console log A. So I would because A is now hello, I would console log that. And now I wouldn't do a comma this time because it has a plus here. So plus, and then there's a space for hello.
Mm-hmm.
So, hello.
Okay. So I see in the line above you have 1, 6. So what's the 1 about?
Oh, this is just number 1. Like
Oh, I see. Okay. You're
Yeah.
listing the problems. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great job. Does anyone not understand how we got to this conclusion? Anyone have any questions? Please ask. Okay, then let's move on. Question 2, please.
Okay. So I equals 0. And currently 0 is less than 10. So we would move on. Console log I, which would be 0. And then add 3 becomes 3, but then you go back up and you add this one, that becomes 4. 4 is still less than 10, so console log 4. Add 3 becomes 7, plus 1 from here becomes 8. 8 is less than 10. And then you console log that one. Add 3, 8 becomes 11. Plus 1 is 12. 12
Yes.
is greater than 10. Huh?
Okay, I'm just saying yes. Keep going.
Okay. 12 is greater than 10. So then you'd skip the for loop and then you'd come to the console log. Outside of the loop, you'd put that there plus I, which is currently 12 still. And this is the answer.
0, 4, 8 outside of the loop plus 12. Nice. Does anyone have any questions about this? Number 2. Do we understand why we console log 12 at the end? When we got to 12 in the for loop, we no longer ran the function inside the for loop, but I is still 12. So when we got to the line below that says console.log outside of the loop plus I, we still retain that value. So that is why we said outside of the loop and then 12. Okay, so then number 3.
Okay. So sum currently equals indice or index of 0 on the array, which is 1. So sum equals 1. I equals 0. Array length is 3. So currently 0 is less than 3. So you'd continue and you'd add the index of I, which in this case is 0. So 1. You'd add that to sum. So plus 1 equals 1. Sum is, I'm sorry, is 2. Sum is now 2. Console log the current sum is, yeah, that. 1 second.
Okay.
Wait, yeah, I got this one wrong actually. So wouldn't it be?
So then let's get some help. Can anyone
Not
help
bad.
correct this one?
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, I can jump in. So if you read the bonus at the bottom, it's trying to hint at you what's going on. So since you established the variable sum as the first indice, when you start I at 0, it's going to add the first indice to the first indice because it's already established in sum. If you wanted to avoid that and get the actual total of the array, you would start I at position 1, since indice 0 is already accounted for. Does that make sense?
So would Mike, did you want to annotate the screen or write a T diagram on there for us?
Sure. How do I do that?
You would have to go to the Zoom controls and then click annotate.
It's on the left bottom. There's a little pen.
Left bottom little pen. Oh, I see it. Okay. So right here, since this is already established for position 0, what you're starting at here is already 1. So this sum right here equals 1. And then since you're running the for loop at the first indice, you're re-adding 1 to itself. And then console logging 1 plus 1.
That makes sense.
If you wanted to skip that, since you've already established sum as 1, you would start the for loop as var I equals 1, and then the rest of the for loop. And that way, when you go to run the code inside of the for loop, it would do array of numbers 0 plus equals array of numbers 1, which would be 1 plus 3. And then you would continue throughout the array until you reach less than array length. But since you established 0 and started at 0 in the for loop, it adds them twice for the first step.
Okay. All right, so this is why T diagramming is the best visual for any change of variables. We're going to see exactly what we're doing here. So let's go ahead and see if we can do this. My Zoom is acting up, so actually it's my mouse as it did last week. I'm gonna have to restart after this meeting here, but let's try and T diagram this for the sake of everyone understanding. So we have sum, var, sum.
Okay, sum right now is 1, but yeah. And then I is 0.
Okay, and while I is less than array dot numbers of length, so what is that value? Array of numbers dot length.
Right now it's 3. So
Okay.
0 is less than 3. So you'd move on and you'd add 1 to 0, right?
So we have sum plus equals array of numbers at I. An array of numbers at I right now. I is 0, so array of numbers at I is the value is 1.
Mhm.
So sum plus equals 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. So the new value is 2.
Okay.
And then we console log the current sum is, and then we get 2. So the current sum is 2. Then we increase I, so I goes to 1.
Okay, and then so 0. So 1 is still smaller than 3. So then
Well, it would be a position or indice 1. So it would be 3 is less.
okay.
Or no, I'm sorry. You were right. You don't take into the account the indice until you execute.
Right. So we're checking, is 1 less than 3? Yes. So then sum plus equals array of numbers at I, and I is 1 right now. So then array of numbers at I is 3. So sum plus equals 3. So sum is 2. So then the new value is 5. And then we say console.log the current sum is 5. All right. And then we increase I by 1 again. So now it's 2. Is 2 less than the length? Yes, because the length is 3. So then we sum plus equal array of numbers at I. So then sum plus equals array of numbers at I, which is 5. So 5 plus 5 is 10. We console.log the current sum is 10. Then we increase I another time. And now I is going to be 3. Is 3 less than 3? No. So then we exit the for loop and we console.log the total sum is, and then what sum equals.
Okay.
Okay. So now we're understanding, right? Let's go, let's give a number now, 1 through 10, of how we're understanding this last one. So always T-diagram, guys. Whenever we go on to breakout groups from now on and we give our results, let's do a T-diagram either from start or have one already written for us when we present. You can do it on an Excel sheet. You can write it by hand like we did here. But it's going to be too cumbersome to find out what our values are going to be changing to if we just do it in our head. And plus, we want to prove our work anyways. All right, so we have a good understanding of this. Let's go ahead and end the lecture now and meet up in 10 minutes.